I did an earlier video on this. I'm going to do it again. I took for a bike ride and that. When I come walking home, I come down Grampian Street, and there's a pigeon. And my pigeon keeps following me. He follows me all the way to the house. And so I got home and I hid behind a tree to see if it would go back home. So I didn't have to lead it back home, because when it comes here, it sits on the house, or it's sitting around the section, and all the cats in the neighborhood try to kill it. And the pigeon just sits right in front of them all, oblivious of how close it is to death. But when I was hiding under the tree, the pigeon flew under the tree, and saw me, and then flew back up in the lamp post to let me know it had seen me. Why I like Pet Sounds. Pet Sounds is my favourite album. I remember the Beach Boys. First song I ever heard of theirs, I was at a dentist as a child, and I heard Two Girls for Every Boy, Surf City by Jan and Dean. Many claim that Brian sings lead on that, but it was co-written by Brian, and so it was basically Brian's first hit as far as I can remember. And then my sister had a boyfriend my older sister had a boyfriend who liked the Beach Boys, and he gave her 2 or 3 albums, and I just fell in love with the songs. Life was very sad for me up to that point as a teenager. I'd already, tried to commit suicide a couple of times. I was very miserable. I didn't like what life offered. I wanted a more simpler, gentle, fun life where you had fun, but you had innocent fun. And I was confused. Everyone was pushing me into areas I didn't want to be in. People trying to get me to do stuff I didn't want to do. And I heard things like In My Room, and I was like, yeah, I get it. You get me. And it was like, yeah, Brian had hit me right on the right note. I'd rather stay in my room than go out and party. But I went out and partied and did things because everyone kept telling me this was normal life. Now, I never really looked back in history and realized that normal life had nothing to do with what we were doing. Because we were brought up in it, we thought this was it. Both my parents liked to drink, do drugs, so to them the social thing was this was normal. And In My Room really hit a spot. And then there was Surfer Girl, and that hit my romantic note, and I was like, yeah, wouldn't we all like a girl like that? And all the soft songs of the Beach Boys, The Warmth of the Sun, I really like that. Love the harmonising, love the depth, and the way it reached within me. Kind of like In My Room, it took me from, I was living in this miserable down all the time. And the reason for trying to commit suicide was I was trying to switch off the light. I didn't want to be here anymore. And so I was down in this downer, living this life I didn't like being a part of. And then I got lifted up by the songs, by the music. And in my room was like, yeah, someone like us likes to be like that. Someone else would rather be at home instead of out there in this crazy world, this dysfunctional, toxic world that we live in, that I couldn't relate to, I couldn't connect with. And I was having trouble with it because people kept saying I was weird. My girlfriends kept calling me a loner. They kept saying, what's the matter with you? Don't you want to go and party? I'd be like, no. My ex-wife was always wanting to party, and she couldn't understand. So, and then I had a girlfriend. She was 18 and I was 15, and she worked and I didn't. And I went downtown to the record store and I found Pet Sounds, an original 1966 record album, LP. And I hinted to her because I didn't have a job. And I'm not very naughty of me. I felt rather guilty for doing this, but I hinted to her that Pet Sounds was down there. And so she went and brought it for me. And I remember the day she brought it to me, I was so happy. And I played it and played it and played it. I've still got the album here somewhere. And I'd already fallen into love with the Beach Boys music. My older sister gave me 22 Southern 7 hits, the best of the Beach Boys, of which there was probably many versions. And I remember hearing Friends for the first time and absolutely being over the hell. I thought, this is such a good song, and I was at the stage where I was just mellowing out with the music, and it was taking me to a zone where other people had to get high on drugs, lots of casual sex, parties, getting drunk all the time, whereas I was getting it from the music, and I really enjoyed it. And because of Brian's suffering, we all connected with Brian, and we could zone in on the same thing. We were going through the same thing, the same suffering. And so Pet Sounds, to me, hit the spot. And it's, wouldn't it be nice as like, hey, I mean, didn't anybody ever say that? And the song's beautiful. According to one write-up, they said it was about sex, the pure pleasure of sex. I never saw it as a pure pleasure of sex. I always saw it as a pure pleasure of, wouldn't it be nice if you and I were together, we fell in love, we could do everything together, no one else in our space, no one else bothering us, no one else telling us what to do, just you and me together. Wouldn't it be nice if we were, and he's got the part at the end, good night and the pray, and I just loved it. So wouldn't it be nice? It was one of my really, it touched me. You Still Believe Me. It's a good song. That's Not Me. That really, you just say, well, what is me? What am I doing that is me? What am I doing that's right? What am I doing to impress other people? What is me? And people say, do this, do this. And he's saying here, these things, they aren't me. And these are questions, they're questions in Pet Sounds that parents today don't ask their kids to think about a lot in many cases. There was a guy, I can't remember who he was, in England who took out a personal ad in the major English newspapers at his cost, advertising Pet Sounds. That's how much Pet Sounds touched him. Mojo magazine voted it as #1 song of the century. Rolling Stone magazine put it as third, behind Sgt. Pepper's, which I absolutely cannot. I think it was Sgt. Pepper's Revolver and then Pet Sounds, and I can't stand Sgt. Pepper's. My mother was heavy on Elvis and heavy on the Beatles, heavy on anything that was in. Like if there was a fad, like when disco came out, Mum was deep into disco. Whatever came out, she was deep into. There wasn't much thinking about it. She was guided and governed by the fads, and it's a horrible way to be. That's Not Me was, Don't Talk, Put Your Head on My Shoulder, lovely song. I'm Waiting for the Day, when you can. That's a good, thoughtful song too. Let's Go Away for a While. Salute John B, they say, was added because the people at Capitol Records didn't like Pet Sounds and they wanted a hit. They couldn't see a hit, and Wouldn't It Be Nice in the other songs, or Caroline No. And Brian actually brought Caroline No out on his own. And I think was it number 14 it reached or something? He wanted to see if he could bring up music on his own without the Beach Boys. He didn't tell them, he just released it. And I think he should have continued on that way on his own. But he didn't. He lost confidence because he was an undiagnosed depressant and suffering anxiety. And so because he was suffering anxiety, when even though he was a huge success and called a genius and the greatest music producer and arranger and in America of the time, he couldn't see it in himself. I used to wonder when I do things that were amazing, and I'd say, "Wow, this is so cool." Oh, well, I'd say, "I'm happy with what I've done." Someone would come along and say, "That's amazing." Then the next time I did something, I'd completely lose confidence again. I never got to the arrogant hi. I didn't keep building myself. I couldn't do it because too many years of people telling me how useless I was. And like Brian had his father, when he heard God Only Knows, his father said it was a suicide note. That's how sick his father was. And his father's the one who bashed him on the head. And Brian lost his hearing. And he's got only hearing in one ear. His father was abusive, a narcissist, and a prick. And he was on Brian's case all the time, I think, because his father wanted to be a great musical producer and arranger and everything. He was jealous of Brian, and he kept putting Brian down because inside he just couldn't bear to see Brian do better. I've seen women do this with their daughters, and their daughters, as their daughters grow up and they're pretty, the mothers get angry and jealous because they're losing their looks and the daughters are looking at it and all the tension's going to the daughter. I've seen fathers do it with their sons, when the sons are really good. I was reading about Ron Howard, and he said his father, who wanted to be an actor, when Ron Howard was 5 years old, and he was doing a TV series, and then he was doing Opie and the Andy Griffith Show. His father wasn't jealous in the slightest. His father heavily encouraged her. He taught him, he showed him what to do, and he prepared him for it. Whereas with Brian Wilson, his father made Brian's life hell. And he knew Brian wanted to impress his father, so his father did everything to hurt him. One of them was Brian gave him the rights to the songs up to, I think it was 1964, and his father sold him off for like $500, which was they're worth millions, worth a huge amount of money, and which was a direct stab in Brian's back, where he was saying, "Oh, give me this junk, and I'll hock it off for a few bucks because it's junk," and it was a deliberate way to hurt him, and it did. It hurt badly. And so Brian couldn't succeed in his head. Publicly, he could succeed in the world. People could see his genius, his brilliance, but Brian couldn't see it because he'd been constantly told he was hopeless. And I found that with my own stuff in my own life. So I could resonate with this. There was a definite spiritual connection with music and my own life. And I could sit there and say, I just wasn't made for these times. Was like, I could really connect with that. I just felt that. I remember the first time I heard it, I remember sitting there, laying in my room, playing the music and crying, just about right through the album, just crying because I was just so. It was just, I just wasn't made for these times, and that's not me, but they hit me, they in a spot in here that no other music had ever done. And they also showed me, like within my room, that a man can be gentle, he can be emotional, he can be loving, he can be soft, he can be kind. Whereas my father was the total opposite. And I was getting this, I can be this like they call Brian the beautiful dreamer. I can be a beautiful soul, not a harsh soul and a mean soul like I'd been shown by my father and his mates and the other people that used to come around the house. I didn't want to be like that. I hated that kind of thing. And I know I disappointed my father many times because he couldn't figure me out. He couldn't understand why I didn't want to be like him. And I couldn't understand why he was like that. So Brian came along and he basically said, hey, I'm going through this. It's all right to go to your room. It's all right to want to be home by yourself while the world's doing the same. It's all right to, I've done this. I feel like this. I know what this feels like. I've gone through this mental trauma, this anxiety, this suffering. And this is what I was going through as a teenager. And so I was so into, I want to go to my room, play my music and write or read or do whatever I'm doing in my room. So it's before computers, so it was really cold. And cat. And so that's not me. And God Only Knows is just a special song. It's like, to me, it was the loveliest song. It was the one where you want to sing to your sweetheart. And I don't know, the first time I heard it, I remembered the Lobo songs and the Stylistics and the other songs whose music I really like Breed and I'd Love You to Want Me and all that. But God Only Knows, it seemed to me to approach love on a different angle, a very special, deep, spiritual angle. And it was really beautiful. And at the end, with Brian and Bruce Johnson doing the but God only knows, God only knows, was just beautiful. And Bruce Johnson was brought in after Glenn Campbell to replace Brian on stage, and he just happened to be in the studio when they were doing that part, and all the rest of the boys had gone home and they were doing that, so it was really cool. And here today, I remember sitting in the lounge at Mum's place and with the earphones on, all my sisters are making a noise, and I was listening to Here Today, and I could hear Brian in the background, kept scratching my feet, and Brian in the background doing, giving directions, and you can hear it with headphones, but not so much on the stereo. And I was like, wow, this is incredible. You can hear him giving directions. And I was really buzzed out on that. I just thought that was cool. Caroline No was just, as I read it back then, it was about feminism, as about a guy falling deeply in love with this really sweet, innocent, humble female, adoring her basically. And then some woman take her under her wing and she cuts off her hair to make it look more like a man, women being men in what they call a men's world, and hardening up. And he's basically, in the end, when he goes, the big long no, no, he's basically crying, please come back. I fell in love with you then. I don't like who you are now, basically. And I've basic few girls I thought were adorable at school and that, and saw them a few years later. It was like, whoa, So it's kind of, yeah, life. So God only knows. I know there's an answer. My real big ones for me on here is, wouldn't it be nice? Because I'd always like to walk up to someone I love to say, wouldn't it be nice? And she says, yes, let's do it. I see something behind my head. Did you see that cat's tail? You can see the cat. The computer. Wouldn't it be nice? That's not me. It's really special. God only knows. I know there's an answer here today. I wasn't made for these times. And Caroline, no. Just beautiful songs. That was illegal. They broke into a zoo not far from, I think, it's Judy O'Brien's house. They broke into the zoo and they took all the photos. I know who took the photos, but that was actually an illegal event. They shouldn't have done it, which is hysterical. No album I have ever listened to has ever touched me like God only knows. My mother was into stuff from Lobo to some really bad stuff. Dad was into probably Grateful Dead, Rolling Stones and stuff like that, I think. And maybe a bit of Gordon Lightfoot and a few others. I don't really remember much about what he liked. Mum's stuff was any fad, whatever came out. The Bee Gees when the Bee Gees came out. Whatever. And she adored every single rock so much she wanted to sleep with the whole damn lot. It was kind of creepy. So, this is the cat. This is not my cat. It comes from over there. But here it is. And you're not supposed to be here. It was the one that was scratching my feet just now. So, Pet Sounds is the only one that touched my heart and showed me that I can be emotional, that I can be gentle, that I can be loving and kind as I wanted to naturally be. Maybe I would have turned out a completely different, maybe millions of people would have turned out different people if we had not had a touch of Brian's soul, spiritual soul upon us in the music of the Beach Boys, like In My Room, Surfer Girl, One for the Sun, Girls on the Beach. Girls on the Beach is a kind of sexist song, I suppose, but the harmonies and stuff are amazing. In My Room, and then this Pet Sounds itself. It's just, I just wasn't made for these times. Just made me feel I so feel I wasn't made to be here, or I don't fit in with these times. I would have fit in a shack in Colorado in the 1800s or the 1700s or something like that, or a medieval night in the nights in the days of villages and stuff in good old England, or Robin Hood days and things like that. There's certain things and certain days and certain times I really connect with. And I always felt I was not made for these toxic, dysfunctional times we have today. And that's why I do a big push to change it. If I'm going to leave a mark before I die, it's that. It's the mark that somewhere in the future I can open someone's mind up where they'll sit there and say, we can change this. Let's change it. And there's a big revolution. You can see it starting now. People are so discontent with the government, the rules, the regulations, the telling us wear a mask, not a mask. The mask don't make a difference. I only wear a mask when I go shopping because I'm told to. I can't get into the supermarket unless I have a mask on, so I wear it. But they don't make a difference. The COVID gets through them, and it's been proven. Unless you've got the, what is it, the N95 ones, which I have got some of here, and only the ones you use for operations. They're the only ones that make a difference and stop it. So yeah, so I got subject again, didn't I? Brian Wilson is the most. I've heard incredibly good things about him. His music is beautiful. It's wonderful. It's soft. It's tender. It's really makes a man feel good to be a man. Makes a man feel good to be soft, gentle, loving, kind, humble, and wanting to be compassionate. Whereas other music like Rolling Stones and that and other stuff and the Beatles is on a different angle. There might be some good music there, but it's not. It doesn't reach your heart. It doesn't touch you. Lobo songs did. I mean, I love you to want you to that. There's beautiful songs. Bread. I'm just trying to figure out which one's saying I love you to want you. Stylistics. And there's a lot of soul music I really like, and that's touching too. But Brian Wilson managed to hit us in places that no one else ever did hit us. And that's why I like Brian Wilson's music. And that's why I like Pet Sounds.